Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. Today I thought I'd take a trip into Melbourne and go to the State Library. It was a really rainy day. Melbourne has been having some horrible weather, so rather than stay at home I decided to come and see the library. The library itself is our state library. It was built around 20 years after Melbourne was founded. It's quite a majestic building and a place that I love going to many times a year. There's a lot of things that you could see and do, and in particular this library has been completely renovated inside, and when I was inside I saw this great little Lego. Who doesn't love Lego? And it shows, I guess, a model of the entire library itself. And it's actually quite true to form. You could sit and see some of the little characteristics, and there's the dome, the reading room, which we'll go to for real. And yeah, you could see the librarian looking at everyone and probably shushing everyone. It's quite an interesting model. And there's the elephant. There's a story about an elephant. The library used to have the Melbourne Museum attached to it, and there was this elevator that used to escort the animals. Of course, the animals aren't there anymore. The Melbourne Museum is actually at the museum. So let's move on. As you go upstairs, there's an auditorium of paintings. Now, we're not going to see the paintings today. We're just going to walk straight through into one of the reading rooms. And in this section of the library, you can actually sit down and read at the various desks. But there's magazines and there's audio books and journals that you can borrow. But you can only borrow them for the period while you're there. It's got all the books that are out in print currently, and sometimes I like to go through it. And I found a couple of books that were to do with books and libraries. Now, if I wanted to borrow those, like I said, I would just have to sit there and take them out and read them there and then. It's not a library where you can take books out. So I had a bit of a look through here just to see some of the books that are currently in print, and as you can see, there's another one about stories and books about libraries, which is always interesting. When you're at the library, you can see the armour of Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly was an infamous outlaw here in Victoria, bushranger, who killed some, let's say, men of the law back in the 1800s. He's not a hero. He's certainly not a hero of mine, but he is a legend, I guess, in Victoria. And you could see the armour that he had created himself to try and fight his way off with the law. You can see his entire story here at the library. Let's go upstairs to try and get to the dome, which is really quite spectacular. And as you walk through the library, there's a lot of places that you can go to. You see, the building itself, it's not just one building. There are a variety of different buildings that over the years have been joined up. And you can see that as you look out certain windows. So there's a lot of nooks and crannies that you can go and investigate. But what I love is this particular room, which is the dome, and is pretty much true to form as it was back in the 1800s. Now, it's painted white, and I think back then it would have been a lot darker, but it's such a spectacular room, and I love coming here. I love the old worldy feel, the timber panelled, the desks that you could open up and just hold to a certain position. There are obviously electricity, so you can actually put your laptop here. And today's really quiet, surprisingly. There's not many students about, which was really interesting. And I guess it's partly because of the time of the year. Now, in the centre of this room is where the librarian who was on duty used to probably overlook and oversee and also encourage people to, to borrow the books. Nowadays, no one sits there. There's the table that just kind of overlooks everyone there. It's really It's really quite spectacular, very interesting how it used to be like. All around the building, along the walls there, you can't get to those middle bits, but they stock the very old books, the heritage books that you can't actually borrow again. You can actually see them if you like. Through this room there are little displays, and what I love about this particular area is this Art Deco feel to it. Melbourne itself has a lot of buildings in this format. It's kind of cross between the 1800s but a lot of Art Deco, so it's kind of gothic looking. And this particular mural is all about industrialisation, so it has that feel to it. And I encourage you, if you are visiting the city, go and have a look around the various buildings. You'll see the buildings are all a mix of 1800s, but also a lot of 1920s and 1930s. It is quite spectacular to see. Now, this is Queen's Hall, and back in the day, it didn't look like this, and there is a photo which I'll show you. And Queen's Hall holds all the books of authors who have been published in Victoria. So if you get a book published and you're from Melbourne, it holds the books here. And here's the photo that I was talking about. And it is obviously the Queen's Reading Room. It's now called the Ian Potter's Queen's Hall. And it is quite a nice space for you to go and sit and read, and also take out one of those books that I was mentioning that were published from Melbourne people who have written books. I also had a bit of a look through the books that are not in English. So I came across these French books here, and there's not much of a big collection here, but it shows some of the French books from Australian authors here, like Elliot Perlman. If you haven't read his books, are quite great to read, highly recommend. But also the books by Patrick White and Tim Winton are also here. Graham Simpson is another Australian author, obviously translated into French, also worth reading. So continuing on, I had a look at some of the books that are in white, that I see a lot of French books are in white, but also Charlotte Wood. I highly recommend her book. She's also an Australian author, and she's written a book called Stoneyard Devotional, which has been published this year. But I highly recommend her previous book, The Weekend, which is about a group of friends, lady friends in their 50s, who meet up one weekend. Highly, highly recommended book. You don't have to read it in French if you don't want to. So let's look at the Greek ones. I also read Greek books. Greek is my background. You can see Peter Carey here. He's an Australian author. And again, not much of a collection in Greek, unfortunately, but, that's what happens. Thomas Keneally is another Australian author. What have I got there? Okay, I just was interested in the picture there. Thomas Keneally. I wonder why they didn't actually write it in his Greek letters. But you know how I was saying about the library being a collection of different buildings that are all covered up? Well, here you could see one building to the next. And here's another view from the top floor, the 6th floor of the reading room, the dome. All around the dome there is exhibitions, and there's an excellent exhibition on the world of the book that goes into the history of books. I didn't go through it this time simply because I've seen it multiple times. And in the olden days, they didn't have elevators, of course, but they had this beautiful staircase that goes up all across the 6 floors. Everything is actually kind of locked away now. You can't actually go too close up because, obviously they're worried about people falling. Now, the library has a readings bookshop, which is good to just have a bit of an explore. And I had a look at these pins and wonderful little books and playing cards and mugs and things that would make great gifts for anyone. And I had to buy a few things here for gifts. There's socks as well, if you're that way inclined. Yeah, I would buy that. Stay weird. Yeah, I didn't buy that, but I would definitely buy socks about books. There's a section on Australian literature here, and here's a book that I was talking about, Charlotte Wood, called Stoneyard Devotional. Highly recommended. Trent Dalton is another Australian author. He's written a few books. Now, I'm by the by with his writing, not bad. This one is also getting a good write-up, Australian author too. And there's various books here, as you can see. Gerald Murnane, I checked out. Yep, another good one. Who else? Looking. Sally Hepworth is interesting if you're that way inclined. There's Tom Keneally again. Hannah Kent, highly recommended. The Boat, also very good. Really, you can't go wrong. Australian authors, we've got to love them. Richard Flanagan, also quite good. Booker Prize-winning author. And one that I'd like to read. Who else? Helen Garner, yes, highly recommend. So look, this gives you an idea of some Australian authors that you could read if you're interested. Now here, I had a look at the diaries. Now, I'm someone who doesn't have a paper diary, hasn't had a paper diary in years, but I saw this one, Julian Barnes. I spent ages flicking through this book and I was thinking, should I buy it? Shouldn't I? Should I? Should I go back to a paper diary? There's something in it with a paper diary. And of course, if it's an introduction by Julian Barnes and there's little snippets by Anita Bruckner, it's also this great family tree, which I spent ages looking at. Look, it takes ages for me to decide whether or not to buy anything. Books are so expensive here in Melbourne. Just to give you an example, this is $36 just for a diary. But I thought to myself, you know what? It's Julian Barnes. I'm going to buy it. So here we are, flicking through the book, and then I thought, should I buy a bag? No, I don't need another bag, even if it's a bag on books. Cooking books I can do without. My God, number one, I should cook more. But I love looking through bookstores and I love looking through journals. I'm a writer. I love to scribble in books. But again, I didn't buy them. Here we go, more books that are recently out in Australia. Now, these books are current sellers. And I've been looking at some of these books because I've started a book club at my golf club this year. So I'm interested in seeing what is out there and also what would challenge my own reading, because I need to read a lot more wildly and widely as well. So here you go, some new books. No, I won't be getting anything about Elon Musk, but Louis de Berniers. Oh my God, I love his books. I've got a whole heap of them. Mary Beard, yes, she's good too. Lee Sales, storyteller, yep, very good. And you can't go past The Corners of Melbourne, Robin Annear. This is not her first book. She's written a few others. Highly recommended. And there's Wifedom. That's another one I'd like to read. And Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which I don't think I've done a review on it, can't remember, but I've certainly read that book. And The Naturalist of Amsterdam is another new one this year. So here we are. This is Readings Bookstore at the State Library. You can get lost for hours in here. So after that, I headed on down to the Myer storefront. This is where you come to see the Christmas storefronts with the displays of the Christmas festivities. However, given that it was quite full and there's no way I'm going to wait in a queue, I thought I'd walk down the Block Arcade and see the Christmas decorations and enjoy those. So there we go, a little bit of Melbourne, a little bit of the Block Arcade, people enjoying their coffees, and looking at what Haig's chocolate has on display, and also seeing the wonderful storefronts. And I thought to myself, hey, let's go down and see what the Hopetown Tea Rooms has on display. There's a lot of different cakes and different chocolates to see, but again, too expensive for my liking. The Hopetown Tea Rooms is one of the oldest tea rooms here in Melbourne. You can just get lost on the storefronts. Look at those delicious cakes. There's usually a queue to come into this store because it's one of the oldest tea rooms of Melbourne, and it's kept in the style as it was in the 1800s. A lot of old worldy cakes here that you can see. A very nice place to come here with your mum or with friends to have a cup of tea and enjoy. Look at all these people. Look how full it is. It's always full, and you have to just kind of wait your turn. But we're not going to wait today. It's been quite nice just to meander around the city, go to the State Library, and look at all these storefronts. Okay, I'm back now. Thank you for joining me on my little jaunt. I wanted to get away from the house for a little while and out of the miserable weather. And so going to the State Library is just a typical short journey for me. Look at this. I ended up buying the diary. This is going to be very interesting because I have not used a paper diary for scheduling or planning anything. Usually I use my iPhone. Everything is electronically. Everything is nice and easy. But there was something about this, mainly because there was an introduction by Julian Barnes and there were quotes by Anita Bruckner in this diary that I had to get it. And also it is quirky enough for me to really like this. It's all about the family, and there are certain diagrams and paintings and photographs of family life, which I love. It's kind of quirky. That's why I like it. I'm a bit bizarre that way. Look at this I don't know how this relates to family, but you've got this kid dressed as Napoleon Bonaparte, and he's playing hide and seek, and there's a fox looking at him. Well, I think it's a fox. It could be a cat, but looks like a fox. That's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, this is exactly my kind of type of thing. Oh, it's wonderful. Okay, so this is going to be interesting how I'm going to start using a paper diary and taking this everywhere with me to plan and schedule all my events for 2024. So looking forward to using this. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to continue reading now. Thanks for joining me on my little jaunt to the State Library of Melbourne, Victoria. Okay then, bye for now.